The dust-covered stranger rode into Sweetwater Junction like a phantom, his silhouette wavering in the heat rising off the Texas plains. The year was 1872, and the West was still wild, a place where fortunes could be made or lost on a single day, and lives could change in the blink of an eye. For Rose O'Malley, that day had arrived, though she didn't know it yet. Rose wiped her hands on her flour-dusted apron and stepped out of the bakery to watch the newcomer. She'd come to own the small establishment after her husband died of consumption 3 winters back, leaving her alone in a town where a woman in business was viewed with skepticism at best. But Rose had persevered, her bread becoming famous for miles around. The rider dismounted with the fluid grace of a man who'd spent his life in the saddle. His clothes were travel-worn but clean, his face shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. As he tied his horse to the hitching post, Rose noticed how gently he handled the animal, murmuring something she couldn't hear. When he turned toward her bakery, she saw his face clearly for the first time, sun-bronzed and weathered, with striking blue eyes that seemed to hold both weariness and determination. He couldn't have been more than 30, but there was something in those eyes that spoke of miles traveled and hardships endured. "Madam," he said, tipping his hat as he approached, "might I trouble you for some bread? Been riding since dawn, and my provisions ran out yesterday." "Of course," Rose replied, gesturing him inside. "Just pulled fresh loaves from the oven not half an hour ago." The cool dimness of the bakery was a welcome relief from the scorching midday sun. The stranger removed his hat, revealing dark hair in need of a trim. "Name's Ryder Grayson," he said, extending a calloused hand. "Rose O'Malley," she replied, shaking it briefly before moving behind the counter. "Just passing through, not exactly." His gaze roamed the shelves of bread, pies, and cookies, looking to settle if I can find work. "I've got skills with horses, cattle, can build most anything that needs building." Rose selected her best sourdough loaf and wrapped it in paper. "Town's growing. Might be opportunity here if you're willing to work hard. Always have been." He reached for his coin purse, but hesitated. "Truth is, madam, I need to make what I have stretch. I have 6 mouths to feed." Rose blinked in surprise. The man didn't wear a wedding ring, but that didn't mean much out here. "Your family with you, in a manner of speaking." A smile softened his features. "My sister's children. She and her husband both took sick last winter. Didn't make it. The little ones have only me now." Something in Rose's heart shifted as she looked at the man before her. She'd seen plenty of drifters in her time, but there was an honesty in his eyes that couldn't be faked. "The youngest is just 4, he continued. "They're staying at the livery stable with my horses until I can find proper lodging. Been a long journey from Kansas." Rose made a decision then, one that would alter the course of her life. She smiled and added several more loaves to his package, along with half a dozen cookies. "Then let me bring bread and heart too," she said softly. "No charge today, and I might know of a place where you and your little ones can stay, at least until you find your footing." Relief and gratitude washed over Ryder's face. "Madam, I can't accept." "You can and you will," Rose insisted. "I've been where you are, Mr. Grayson. Sometimes pride has to take a back seat to necessity. Call me Ryder, please." His voice had grown husky with emotion. "And thank you. The children will be mighty happy tonight." Rose impulsively added a jar of preserves to his package. "The old Cooper place on the edge of town has been vacant for months. It's not much, but the roof doesn't leak, and there's a good well. I know the banker who holds the deed. Perhaps we could speak to him together." Ryder's eyes met hers, and something passed between them, a recognition, perhaps, of kindred spirits who understood loss and responsibility. "I'd be in your debt," he said. "No debt," Rose replied. "Just neighbors helping neighbors." That's how we survive out here. That evening, Rose closed her bakery early and accompanied Ryder to the livery stable. She wasn't prepared for the sight that greeted her 5 children, ranging from a toddler to a gangly boy of 12, all clean but clearly road-weary, clustered around a small campfire where a pot of beans simmered. "Uncle Ryder," the youngest cried, running to him on chubby legs. Ryder scooped up the little girl, his face transforming with genuine joy. "Emma, I'd like you to meet Miss Rose. She's going to help us find a proper place to stay." 5 pairs of curious eyes turned to Rose. The oldest boy, a lanky youth with Ryder's same blue eyes, stepped forward protectively. "I'm Thomas," he said. "These are my sisters Emma and Sarah and my brothers Michael and James." Rose smiled warmly. "I'm very pleased to meet you all, and I've brought something you might enjoy after your long journey." She opened the basket she'd brought, revealing fresh bread, a crock of butter, apple tarts, and a jug of milk purchased from the general store. The children's eyes widened, but they looked to their uncle for permission before approaching. "Go on," Ryder encouraged them. "Mind your manners and thank Miss Rose." As the children eagerly but politely helped themselves, Rose observed how Ryder ensured the youngest were served first, taking nothing for himself until all 5 were eating. It spoke volumes about the man's character. Later, after the children had eaten their fill and were settling down for the night, Ryder walked Rose to the edge of the livery. "You've done a kindness today that I won't forget," he said quietly. "They're wonderful children," Rose replied. "You're doing right by them." "Trying to," he admitted. "Never thought I'd be raising 5 youngsters at 33, but life has its own plans, I suppose." "That it does." Rose thought of her own shattered dreams, the children she and Patrick had hoped for before illness stole him away. "Tomorrow morning I'll take you to see Mr. Holly's about the Cooper place. 8 o'clock will be ready." He hesitated. "Miss Rose, just Rose, please." "Rose, then." His smile in the fading light made her heart skip oddly. "Thank you for seeing us as people worth helping, not just another burden on the town." "Everyone deserves kindness, Mr. Grayson." "Ryder," he reminded her. "Ryder," she echoed, suddenly aware of how long it had been since she'd spoken a man's given name with any warmth. "Good night." As Rose walked home through the quiet streets of Sweetwater Junction, she wondered what had possessed her to get involved with a stranger and 5 orphan children. Yet something about Ryder Grayson's quiet dignity and obvious devotion to his nieces and nephews had touched her deeply. Perhaps it was simply that she recognized in him someone else who carried responsibilities not of their own choosing, but accepted them without complaint. The next morning dawned clear and promising. Rose arrived at the livery at precisely 8 o'clock to find all 6 Graysons waiting, the children scrubbed clean, their meager belongings packed and ready. Mr. Holly's at the bank was initially reluctant to rent the Cooper place to a newcomer with 5 children and uncertain prospects, but Rose vouched for Ryder's character. After some negotiation, they arranged a reasonable rent with the understanding that Ryder would make needed repairs to the property. "You've got 2 weeks to prove you can pay regular," Holly's warned. "After that, we'll talk about a longer arrangement." "Fair enough," Ryder agreed, shaking the banker's hand. The Cooper place was a modest 2-room cabin with a lean-to kitchen, situated on the outskirts of town with a small barn and corral. It had stood empty since old man Cooper died the previous autumn and showed signs of neglect: a sagging porch step, loose shutters, and an overgrown yard. But as Rose watched the children race excitedly around the property, claiming spaces and making plans, she saw the potential. Ryder walked the perimeter, assessing what needed to be done with a builder's eye. "It's sound," he declared. "Needs work, but nothing I can't handle." "Can we stay, Uncle Ryder?" asked Sarah, the 7-year-old. "Can this be our home now?" Ryder knelt to her level. "We're going to try, sweetheart. I'll need all of you to help. Can you do that?" 5 heads nodded solemnly. "Then yes, this is home for now." Rose found herself returning to the Cooper place daily in the weeks that followed. She brought bread, of course, but also her time and energy. While Ryder replaced rotted boards on the porch and repaired the roof, Rose helped the children clean the inside, taught 12-year-old Thomas and 10-year-old James how to plant a vegetable garden, and showed 9-year-old Michael how to repair torn clothing. Word spread quickly through Sweetwater Junction about the handsome newcomer with 5 children in tow, and the town's response was mixed. Some, like Sheriff Donovan and his wife, brought spare furniture and tools. Others kept their distance, skeptical of Ryder's intentions or concerned about 5 more mouths for the town to potentially support. Ryder proved the skeptics wrong. Within days, he'd found work breaking horses for the Henderson Ranch, earning a reputation for a gentle but effective approach that the local cowboys respected. In the evenings, he worked tirelessly on improving the cabin, building a proper outhouse, and repairing the barn. One evening, 3 weeks after the Graysons' arrival, Rose stayed later than usual, helping Sarah and Emma prepare a stew for dinner. As twilight descended, she realized she'd lost track of time. "I should be going," she said, untying her apron. "Stay," Ryder said from the doorway where he'd been watching. "There's plenty, and you've earned a place at our table many times over." The sincerity in his voice made refusal impossible. Rose found herself seated at the rough-hewn table Ryder had crafted, surrounded by chattering children who had somehow worked their way into her heart. Thomas solemnly said grace, thanking God for their new home, for Uncle Ryder, and for Miss Rose who brings bread and kindness. After dinner, with the younger children tucked into their pallets in the second room, Ryder and Rose sat on the newly repaired porch, watching fireflies rise from the grass. "You've made remarkable progress," Rose observed, gesturing to the property that already looked more cared for than it had in years. "Couldn't have done it without your help," Ryder replied. "The children adore you, and I them." Rose smiled in the darkness. "They're remarkable, all of them." "You're doing a fine job, Ryder. Some days I wonder." His voice held a note of vulnerability she hadn't heard before. "My sister was the nurturer, not me. I never planned on being anyone's parent. Few of us end up with the life we planned," Rose said softly. Ryder turned to look at her. "Your husband, if you don't mind my asking, how long were you married?" 5 years. Rose rarely spoke of Patrick, but somehow in the quiet darkness with Ryder, the words came easily. "We had a farm outside of St. Louis. Patrick caught consumption after nursing neighbors through an outbreak. He was gone within months." "I'm sorry," Ryder said, and she could tell he truly was. "And no children, we hoped, but it wasn't to be." She smoothed her skirt. "After Patrick died, I sold what I could and came west. My cousin owned this bakery and wanted to move to California. It seemed like Providence. And was it? Providence, I mean." Rose considered the question. "I believe so. I've found purpose here. Independence." "You're an extraordinary woman, Rose O'Malley." Ryder's voice was low. "Not many would have reached out to a stranger and 5 orphans the way you did." His words warmed her, but also frightened her a little. She'd built walls around her heart after Patrick died, focusing on survival and her business. Ryder Grayson and his makeshift family were beginning to breach those walls. "It's getting late," she said, rising. "I should go." Ryder stood as well, towering over her in the moonlight. "I'll walk you home." "There's no need, please. It would ease my mind." They walked in companionable silence through the sleeping town. At Rose's door, Ryder removed his hat, turning it in his hands. "The Independence Day celebration is this Saturday," he said. "The children are excited about it. I wondered if you might join us." Rose hesitated only briefly. "I'd like that very much." His smile was worth any risk to her carefully guarded heart. The 4th of July dawned bright and festive in Sweetwater Junction. The town square was decorated with bunting and flags, and tables were set up for a community feast. There would be music, dancing, and fireworks after dark, a rare treat in the small frontier town. Rose spent the morning baking, donating several pies and cakes to the communal tables. She wore her best dress, a pale blue cotton with white trim that she'd saved for special occasions, and pinned her honey-brown hair up with special care. The Graysons arrived midday, the children freshly scrubbed and wide-eyed with excitement. Ryder had trimmed his hair and beard and wore a clean shirt with his best vest. When his eyes found Rose across the square, his smile made her blush like a schoolgirl. "Miss Rose." Emma ran to her, arms outstretched. Without thinking, Rose scooped up the little girl, breathing in the scent of soap and childhood. "Don't you look pretty?" she said, admiring Emma's carefully braided hair adorned with a ribbon. "Uncle Ryder did it," Emma confided. "He said I had to look special for Independence Day. He did a fine job." Rose set the child down as Ryder approached. "You look beautiful," he said quietly, for her ears alone. "Thank you." She felt herself blushing again. "You clean up rather well yourself, Mr. Grayson." The day passed in a whirl of festivities. The children participated in sack races and egg and spoon contests, while Ryder joined the men in horseshoe competitions and tests of strength. Rose helped serve the community meal, but found herself constantly aware of Ryder's presence, the sound of his laugh, the way the other men seemed to naturally defer to him despite his newcomer status. As evening approached and lanterns were lit around the square, the local fiddler and banjo player struck up a lively tune. Couples began to form for dancing. "Miss Rose," it was Thomas, suddenly appearing at her side. "Uncle Ryder wants to know if you'll dance with him, but he's too shy to ask." Rose looked up to see Ryder approaching, looking mortified at his nephew's blunt announcement. "Thomas, that's not exactly 'would you like to dance,' Ryder?" Rose asked, saving him from embarrassment. Relief and pleasure crossed his face. "Very much." He led her onto the makeshift dance floor, one hand at the small of her back, the other holding hers. They moved together as if they'd been dancing for years, not awkward strangers but two people finding unexpected harmony. "I apologize for Thomas," Ryder said. "Subtlety isn't his strong suit." "I find honesty refreshing," Rose replied. "And I'm glad he spoke up. I've been hoping you might ask me to dance." Ryder's eyes darkened. "Have you now, perhaps?" She smiled, enjoying the rare feeling of being light-hearted, almost flirtatious. "Rose," he began, then hesitated. "These past weeks, having you in our lives, it's meant more than I can say. To the children and to me." The music slowed and other couples moved around them, but Rose was aware only of Ryder's nearness, the solid strength of him, the earnestness in his expression. "You've become important to me," he continued. "To us. And I find myself wondering if perhaps a commotion erupted at the edge of the square, cutting him off." Sheriff Donovan's voice rose above the crowd. "Break it up. This is a peaceful gathering." Ryder tensed, his attention shifting immediately to where his nieces and nephews had been playing with other children. "The kids," he said, already moving. They pushed through the crowd to find Michael squared off against a larger boy, both with fists raised. James was restraining his brother, while Thomas stood protectively in front of the younger girls. "What's happening here?" Ryder demanded, his voice carrying authority. "He said we don't belong here," Michael spat, glaring at the other boy. "Said we're just beggars taking charity." Rose saw Ryder's jaw tighten, but his voice remained calm. "Is that so?" The other boy, whom Rose recognized as the blacksmith's son, shuffled his feet but didn't back down. "My pa says you're just passing through, taking advantage of folks' kindness. Says you'll be gone once winter comes." "Billy Davis," the blacksmith himself pushed through the crowd, red-faced. "That's enough out of you. But Pa, you said, never mind what I said in private." Davis turned to Ryder. "No offense meant, Grayson. Boys got a big mouth." Ryder's expression remained neutral, but Rose saw the hurt beneath it. "None taken," he said evenly. "Seems we all need to remember little pitchers have big ears." The tension dissipated as Sheriff Donovan shooed the children back to their games and the adults returned to their celebrations. But the moment was broken and Rose could see Ryder's withdrawal behind a careful mask. "Pay it no mind," she told him quietly. "There are always those who mistrust newcomers." But he wasn't entirely wrong, was he? Ryder's voice was low. "We have been accepting charity, yours especially." "Friendship isn't charity," Rose countered. "And you've worked harder than any man in this town to provide for those children." Before Ryder could respond, Emma tugged at his sleeve, her eyes wide with excitement. "Uncle Ryder, they're going to light the fireworks soon." Ryder's expression softened as he looked down at his niece. "Then we'd better find a good spot to watch, shouldn't we?" The rest of the evening passed pleasantly enough, with the children oohing and aahing at the rare spectacle of fireworks. But Rose felt the distance Ryder had placed between them, and it troubled her. When the celebration ended and families began heading home, she found a moment to speak with him privately. "Will you come by the bakery tomorrow?" she asked. "I'd like to finish our conversation." Something flickered in his eyes, hope, perhaps, or uncertainty. "I'll be there," he promised. Rose barely slept that night, her mind replaying the day's events, particularly the brief moments in Ryder's arms as they danced. She was falling in love with him. She realized not just with Ryder, but with his entire makeshift family. The thought terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. Morning brought a clarity she hadn't expected. Rose opened the bakery as usual, but her thoughts were elsewhere, rehearsing what she might say when Ryder appeared. He arrived mid-morning, hat in hand, looking as uncertain as she felt. "You wanted to see me." Rose gestured to the small table in the corner of the bakery. "Sit, please." "Would you like coffee?" "Thank you." She poured 2 cups and joined him, acutely aware of his presence in the small space. Outside, Sweetwater Junction went about its business, unaware of the moment unfolding within the bakery walls. "Yesterday," Rose began, "before we were interrupted, you were saying something about my importance to your family." Ryder's hands tightened around his cup. "Yes, but after what happened, I realized perhaps I've been selfish. You've done so much for us already, and I have little to offer in return." "Is that what you think?" Rose leaned forward. "That our friendship has been one-sided, hasn't it?" His blue eyes met hers. "You've given us bread, guidance, your time and care. What have I given you? Purpose," she said simply. "Joy, companionship." "Ryder, before you and the children came to Sweetwater, I was existing, not living. I had my bakery and a few acquaintances, but no real connection. You changed that." Hope dawned in his expression. "Rose, let me finish," she said gently. "When my husband died, I thought that part of my life was over. I never expected to care for anyone again, certainly not a man with 5 children in tow." She smiled. "But life has its surprises." "Are you saying—" "I'm saying that I care for you, Ryder Grayson. And for Thomas, James, Michael, Sarah, and Emma. More than I thought possible." Ryder reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "I've fallen in love with you, Rose O'Malley. I think I started falling that first day when you said let me bring bread and heart too. You've brought heart to our lives every day since." Rose felt tears prick her eyes. "And you've restored mine." "I can't offer you wealth or an easy life," he said, his voice husky with emotion. "But I can promise to work hard every day to deserve you, to be a good husband, and to make a real home for all of us." "That's all I want," Rose whispered. "A family. A home filled with love." Ryder stood, drawing her to her feet and into his arms. "Then say you'll marry me, Rose. Say you'll be mother to these children who already adore you, and wife to a man who will cherish you all his days." "Yes," she breathed, just before his lips met hers in a kiss that sealed their future. They were married 3 weeks later in Sweetwater Junction's small church, with the entire town in attendance. Even Howard Davis, the blacksmith, came forward to offer congratulations and a handcrafted set of fireplace tools as a wedding gift. "Town's better for having you here, Grayson," he admitted gruffly. "Reckon I was wrong about you moving on." "Sweetwater's home now," Ryder replied, his arm around his new wife's waist. Rose wore a simple cream-colored dress with wildflowers in her hair. The children stood beside them during the ceremony, Thomas proudly serving as best man, Sarah and Emma scattering flower petals, and James and Michael bearing the rings. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, 6 voices cheered loudest of all. The Cooper place, now the Grayson home, was transformed. Ryder had added a proper bedroom for himself and Rose, expanded the main room, and built bunks for the children. Rose's skillful touches were evident everywhere, from curtains at the windows to braided rugs on the floor. Her bakery continued to thrive, with Thomas now helping before school each morning. One evening in late autumn, with the first chill of winter in the air, Rose sat on the porch with Ryder after the children were asleep. "I had a letter from my sister in Denver today," she said, leaning against his shoulder. "Good news, I hope. She's coming for Christmas." Rose smiled. "She wants to meet her new nieces and nephews, and you, of course." Ryder kissed the top of her head. "Family should be together for Christmas." Rose placed his hand on her still flat stomach. "Yes, they should, all of them." It took a moment for her meaning to register. When it did, Ryder's face transformed with wonder. "Are you saying, come spring, there will be 7 mouths to feed?" Rose confirmed, her eyes shining. Ryder gathered her close, his joy beyond words. As they sat together under the vast Texas sky, Rose marveled at life's unexpected turns. A stranger riding into town had become the center of her world, and 6 mouths to feed had become the family her heart had always longed for. In the distance, coyotes called to one another across the plains. Inside the solid walls of their home, 5 children slept peacefully, secure in the knowledge they were loved. And on the porch, Rose and Ryder Grayson held each other, their shared future stretching before them like the endless western horizon, full of challenge, perhaps, but rich with promise and abiding love.